Strider for the Sega Genesis is one of the best, most memorable games from my childhood. I mean, it's games like this that really make me feel sorry for hardcore Nintendo fans, people who only grew up with Nintendo consoles, people who went from the Nintendo to the Super Nintendo and never even tried the Sega Genesis. I mean, Strider, Dynamite Headdy, Streets of Rage 1, 2, 3, Golden Axe 1, 2, 3. It's games like that that really makes me feel sorry for people who never grew up with the Sega Genesis. These games are just so fundamentally nostalgic to my essence. They're the reason I love retro games, is replaying these awesome games from my childhood. I'll give you an example of people that have never played this game. I was watching the UFC fights on Fox with a few friends last night, and I just casually asked them if they ever played Strider. Not only did they never play Strider, they never heard of Strider. And that just blew my mind. It's so strange to me that people have never heard of a classic like this, but this is the world we're living in. This is a gaming world that is predominantly Nintendo gamers, you know, people who grew up with the Nintendo and Super Nintendo. Strider itself is just a fantastic game. It has this non-stop action, a lot of climbing, a lot of really cool jumping sequences, and it also has really cheesy, but at the same time really awesome enemies and bosses. Strider is like a 1980s action movie with Arnold or Stallone. It's cheesy, but it's pure, non-stop, unadulterated, awesome action. The controls of Strider are also not the best. Sometimes jumping is a bit clunky and hitting the enemies is a bit clunky. This makes the game a little more artificially hard, but the controls aren't bad. They're just not up to really smooth, say, Super Mario standards. You could think of Strider as a beta version of Gunstar Heroes, also a classic for the Sega Genesis, BTW. On top of the fun, non-stop action gameplay, really cool bosses, Strider has some of the best scenery in gaming, and that is combined with some of the best hack-and-slash, side-scrolling music in video game history. There's a ton of really memorable songs in this game, and they go together perfectly with the actual levels. Some of the weird bosses, well, you start off killing this pretty easy guy who can become like the Hulk, and he's obviously Ivan Drago. I mean, that's who he's modeled after. After him, you go into this, what I'm thinking is the Kremlin Parliament, and there's just a bunch of guys sitting around, and you think, hey, maybe I can reason with these gents. But they turn into a giant metal robot centipede creature and try to kill me. And of course, it's not just a giant robot centipede, it's a giant robot centipede equipped with a sickle. I mean, this thing wants to harvest me and make me into human bread. After that, we have this beautiful scenic snow level with just a ton of wolves trying to kill you. I don't know what kind of experimental military programs Russia is working on in the distant future, but apparently they have mind-controlled all the wolves in Siberia to attack Strider on sight. I mean, at one point there's like a dozen wolves just waiting for Strider to jump down so they can rip him apart. Strider's regular enemy and boss difficulty curve is a little bit all over the place. For example, these wolves are a lot easier to kill than some of the flying enemies in the first level, and also this mechanical gorilla that's guarding the door is way easier to kill than the giant centipede we fought in the first level. I think one of the reasons I love Strider so much is that he can go anywhere. Not only because he can jump really far, but he can basically latch on to any hard surface in the game. He can climb on walls, on ceilings, whatever. If there's a hard surface to grab onto, he will grab onto it. And this becomes extra badass when he's up in the air, climbing around on flying machinery, where any poor move where you don't judge your jump perfectly will result in like a 5,000 foot drop, and that is, of course, obvious death. Strider is a complete classic. Let me tell you a story about how I first played Strider. The first time I ever tried Strider was when I was a 10-year-old kid in the home of my friend who's also 10. And at the age of 10, this guy was like the worst humankind has to offer. He was a chubby little glutton boy who who was selfish beyond belief. I mean, he literally didn't let me play. He invited me over to his house, he put the Strider cartridge into his Sega Genesis, and he played it for like 45 minutes without letting me play it at once. I mean, there's nothing I can do, you know, it's his game. Hey, can I play? Yeah, just in a minute. Let me finish this level here. When I finally got my own used copy and actually got to play it, after just watching the really awesome gameplay, basically drooling from my mouth for an hour straight, the game was that much more fun to play. I absolutely love Strider, and I recommend everyone watching this to play it, especially if you haven't played it. Never trying Strider for the Sega Genesis is like a gaming sin. Strider gets an official Stan Birdman rating of a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Goodbye, my friends.